Welcome to the One Stiletto in the Grave podcast with your hosts, Sunny Ormonde and Jane.
Well, hello, darlings. Welcome to our last podcast of the season, and we're going out in style. Fashion style. We are feeling somewhere over the rainbowish with our guest today, Kettlewell Colour Queen, Melissa Nicholson. Dorothy delivers her usual homily, Janie talks first aid and guffaws at Sunny's medical faux pas. Sunny talks CPR and goes wild with garlic. Here's Janie.
Hi everybody and welcome to the podcast. Today we have been thinking about business, and particular running businesses in the countryside, of which there's quite a lot in Ambridge, isn't there?
Yeah, that is an awful lot actually when you start to think about it. A huge amount, isn't there? And you can sort of divide it up a bit into groups. Really, maybe sort of posh end, like, you know, there's Lower Loxley Hall, isn't there, and the Grey Gables, and they're constantly having to sort of rethink all the time about new ways of bringing in income, aren't they? Which
Well,
you know,
they
Grey Gables at the minute is being completely refurbished, and so on, but then you've got places like Ambridge Hall and Brookfield doing their B&B. I mean, Brookfield particularly, this is a very new business, isn't it? That they're starting up. What else have we got, Janie?
Well, we've got Amside, darling, Lillian's Amside business,
course.
property development.
Of course,
yeah.
Yes. Which she's obviously they're running from that location in Ambridge, the countryside location.
And
then
we've got. Go on.
No, you go.
Okay. Then there's all the entrepreneurial stuff, isn't there? Like Natasha's business, which I never actually really understand what it is she does. I don't know if you do. I've kind of forgotten.
Yeah, it's sort of, isn't it called Summer Orchard or something?
It is, but
isn't it?
But what is it?
Well, I think it's as I understand it, I think she's obviously been quite entrepreneurial all her life, because I think she started out doing something else, but it's basically selling fruit drinks, I think, to whole food restaurants and things like that, and she's done incredibly well. I think, as I understand it, I think that's what that's about, and she's done incredibly well.
Well,
I thought
it was makeup, so that goes to show how much attention I've been paying to.
Well, I think she did. I think that's what she started out doing,
right?
And then she developed this other business,
right?
And maybe the most recent one, there was Ian and his pizza van.
Ian's pizza van. I know, that's a bit of a change, isn't it, from being the chef at Grey Gables to running a pizza van, but he seems to like it. It fits in better with childcare as well. And of course, Bridge Farm, home of doom and gloom, is it's very entrepreneurial, isn't it? What with the cheese and the
cheese
sausages,
and the dairy window, which seems to be causing quite a furore, doesn't it?
It does.
But yeah, I mean, constantly, any business, whether it's Ambridge or real life, I mean, you know, you're having to think all the time about how you can improve your income and just develop the brand. And in fact, our guest today knows all about rural businesses, because she left London 17 years ago to move to the countryside and started a clothing business with her husband. She's Melissa Nicholson, the managing director of Kettlewell Colours, a name you listeners might recognise because they've been one of our sponsors in this season. Thank you very much. And welcome, Melissa.
Hello, and thank you for the welcome. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, it's lovely to have you.
So
go on, Jane.
We're interrupting each other.
We're doing this all the time.
We're so excited. We're so eager to talk to you.
Too much, yeah.
It is. Tell us about how you started the business, Melissa.
Well, so my husband and I lived in London for about 20 years, and we had 2 young daughters, and I just personally felt that it was time to move back to our roots. So we both grew up in the southwest, and I just think with these 2 daughters, I didn't want to be in London anymore. We'd had our fun, and it was a case of thinking, well, what are we going to do? Neither of our jobs were really applied to the sort of countryside. So I've just been so passionate about colour since having my colours done. And I said to John, I wish we could do something in colour. So anyway, after a couple of bottles of wine, one evening, we decided to start a mail order business in the southwest. And so we did our research, had a look, thought we would work with the colour consultants. We realised there were quite a few dotted around the countryside, and we thought, well, if we could sort of tie in with them, that being our route to market, perhaps we could make it work. So we left London with our two daughters and moved down to Somerset, which is where John's parents were living. And we met up with these farmers and we asked if they had any space for an office. And they provided us with a pig shed, which we converted into an office space. So very, very rural, in the middle of nowhere, with fields all around us, beautiful views. We set about ordering our styles, looking at the colours that we were going to produce. And I must say, this was actually 18 years ago and there was no internet. We had to dial up to get broadband. Do you remember those funny noises it used to make to dial up? So it was, you know, the whole kind of marketplace was incredibly different then. I think if we'd started now, we would probably have overanalyzed it and thought, you know, that would have been too big a jump. But I think at the time we were quite naive and we thought, yes, why not? Johnny Bowden can run a mail order business. Well, you know, let's give it a go. So that's what we did.
And you did. And for any of the listeners who might not be aware of a colour chart in terms of clothing, you said, I had my colours done. Can you just explain what that means, Melissa?
Yes, okay. So I'm actually going to start with John's mother because she was the one who started the trend for us as a family. So she had her colours done back in the early 80s. And what happened was she went to this lady from House of Colour who literally draped her with scarves to identify which were the colours that made her look bright and fresh and youthful, and which were the colours to avoid, i.e. those colours that made her sallow, gave her, you know, shadows where she didn't want them, etc. And then they identified a palette for her, which they called Winter. So it's a little bit confusing. Let's call it the Winter palette. And in the Winter palette, there are colours like black and white and grey and navy as your neutrals, but then there's these bursts of jewel brights, bright red, fuchsia, royal blue and royal purple. So she set about wearing those colours. And people literally said to her, oh my goodness, Margaret, where have you been? What have you done? You look amazing. So it was really transformational for her. So she then kept saying to my husband, oh, darling, I think you're spring, I think you're a summer. And he got so annoyed by it that he actually said, oh, Mum, just give it to me for my birthday. So 18 years old, he went off to have his colours done.
Wow.
So he went off to another consultant in London who put the drapes around him and identified him as a summer. Well, it continued because then he said to me, oh, I think you're an autumn. And I was like, oh, well, I need to know, what am I? So I went off to the same lady and had mine done. And I think the difference for me was that when the drapes were put around me, I'd been living in black. I worked in a fashion company in London. I just wore black. It was the uniform. And she put these colours on me and I suited all these light and bright colours, which I probably had worn as a child. I probably had a few pieces, but I don't know, they got lost in the wardrobe. And I just felt this energy. I just felt so excited by it that I said to the consultant, I want to go and buy this apple green right now. Where can I buy it? And she said, oh, you'll have to wait till the springtime. You won't be able to find your colours in the middle of the winter. And this is November. And I'm thinking, well, that's ridiculous. Why can't I go and find my colours? Now, remembering there wasn't really any internet, there weren't really any mail order companies. People didn't shop online. I didn't even have a mobile phone, if you can believe it. So you had to sort of literally walk up and down the high street to find your colours, and I literally couldn't find them. So that's what gave me the idea for starting a business where we could sell colours for everybody, whether you're black or white or whatever your age, just in simple, basic T-shirts or a scarf, so that you could get the colour all year round. Any colour you wanted, all year round. And that's really the reason. I just hope that there were other people like me who would love to wear their colours. When you've seen how good they look on you, you just want to start wearing them.
So there's a real kind of impact of wearing different colours on our mental health and well-being, really.
Oh, definitely, because it's like coming home. When you wear the colours that belong to you, you just feel good. You receive compliments, and that makes you feel positive, and that gives you confidence, and it sort of brings out the joie de vivre, makes you sort of feel alive and authentic. I mean, we've had customers who've come back to us after attending an interview and saying, I wore my raspberry top to the interview, was complimented on it, and I got the job. We've had that more than, I'd say, probably about 5 or 6 times we've had customers who've sent feedback like that. And I think it just makes you feel really good about yourself. It's sort of celebrating you as yourself rather than trying to fit in and be somebody else, if you know what I mean. Because like my colours happen to be sort of very bright and fresh and warm. I personally believe it supports your personality, or it's linked to your personality, because I think to wear those colours, like my colours, which are very sort of bright and poppy, you have to be quite extrovert and quite fun-loving, and I feel like, when I love a party, I am quite outgoing, so I think the colours do reflect me. Whereas, my husband is a summer, and his colours are more soft and muted. So if you imagine the sun is bleaching the landscape, and you've got, fields of lavender and lovely English summer country gardens, it's sort of softened. And his personality is definitely, he doesn't want the limelight. He's strong, but he just wants to stand back. So I come forward, and he just stands in the background a little bit. I don't want to make him sound like he's not very strong. He's definitely assertive, but he's just doesn't want to be out in the front. And his colours represent that. They're just more soft. They're softer, and he wears them in a more tonal way than I do. I'm kind of bright and splashy, and hello, I'm here. So I do think it works together, the personality and the colours.
It's interesting what you're saying, because yellow is a colour that I love. I mean, we can talk more about the colour in a minute, but it just reminds me of a situation many years ago when I was in Repertory Theatre as an actor, and we were doing a play called Hedda Gabler, and I was playing this character who was a friend of Hedda Gabler's, and the designer at the time, who was a very good costume designer, said, Sunny, because it's all period wear there, she said, I've got this idea. She said, I'd love to see this particular character in a kind of yellow, but she said, the thing is, yellow doesn't suit a lot of people. She said, I've got to be really, really careful. And I remember her putting these kind of swatches of different shades of yellow against me. She said, my goodness, did these really suit you? And it's so interesting now, because it's not a very bright, vibrant yellow. I mean, the listeners can't see me today. I'm actually in a yellow top now, but it's more of a paler, lemony kind of lemon. But really what I wanted to say was, she designed this beautiful costume for me, and I can still see it very much in my mind's eye, and I just felt so good when I was wearing it on stage. So it was kind of an accidental discovery about yellow, but I do love it as a colour. But interesting that she said not many, I don't know if this is so, but she said it's funny, yellow isn't a colour that many people can actually get away with, which I thought was quite interesting at the time.
Well, it's a very good point, actually. Everybody can wear every colour. It's just what shade it is. It's like interesting. You were saying this is a very light, soft yellow. I mean, you can get acid yellow, neon yellow, mustard yellow, bright sunshine yellow, primrose yellow. There's just every shade of yellow you can imagine, and it's all about finding the right one. Because yellow, we think of yellow as a warm colour, but even with yellow, you can add blue, and it can cool it down. And it's about finding the right warmth for your skin tone. So for me, I've got a very warm skin tone, and actually yellow is my favourite colour. I love yellow, it loves me back. So I can wear a lot of yellows. But for somebody else who's got cool skin tone, it's a more tricky colour for them, because it'll need to be really quite a cool yellow. Like, for instance, an acid yellow, or, I mean, a cool soft primrose, perhaps. But I mean, quite often people say, oh, I can't wear red. I mean, everybody can wear red. It's just whether you engage with it. Does it feel too strong for your personality? I mean, I could talk endlessly about colour. There's so many layers to it. It's the most fascinating subject.
Yeah.
As we get older, I think once my hair went, well, I call it white. It's grey, let's face it. And my skin tones changed as I've got older. I think for a while I lost my way with colour because what had suited me before suddenly didn't. For instance, I had to make a change from gold jewellery to silver jewellery because gold suddenly looked really peculiar. Is that something that you've come across with people getting older and needing something different?
Yes. I mean, personally, I think that your palette, your seasonal palette, doesn't change because, like I was saying, I believe it's linked to your personality. You know, it starts within. You know, it's who you are and how you're dressing that. However, within your palette, the colours that you suit will change over the years because as your skin fades and your hair changes colour, things are changing. So you will wear, colours differently. And I think also the journey of life. I mean, as you're going through life, different experiences, in your 20s, you may feel very shy and you want to wear kind of like the softer end of your palette. And as you get older, with your wisdom, you want to, you feel more confident, so you want to wear stronger colours. It depends on your experience, I think. But for you, obviously, your hair changing colour, that's a massive one. A lot of our customers really struggle with that. They say, what do I wear when my hair goes grey? I mean, you should still suit the same palette, but you will notice the shift. So, for instance, let's say when you were, when you had your natural coloured hair, perhaps, you really suited, maybe bright red really suited you. And then as you've got older, you don't quite connect with it. And actually, perhaps you're going to suit more of the blues in your palette. You can change like that, but it wouldn't suddenly mean that you're going to suit mustard, for instance, because that would be in another palette. Yeah. So I think it's really finding the colours that support you at the time in your life. And I think that's where, and I think actually as we get older, we sometimes feel invisible. You sort of think, as I'm getting older, perhaps I'll wear softer colours so I can blend in because I don't want to shout about things. And I think it's the reverse. I think as you get older, just think of all that wisdom. We need to be in focus. We need to be sharing that with the next generations coming up. So therefore, we should embrace colour more as we get older and put the colours back in. So if your skin is fading, well, let's wear a brighter colour to lift it. Let's wear some lovely pop of lipstick.
It's about being brave, isn't it? And I mean, there is colour therapists out there. Are colour therapists, aren't there? Because colour is so important. And even in our homes, you suddenly decide to paint maybe a room slightly differently. You think, oh, let's we've got a very maroon wall actually in our lounge, but I love it. It sort of is invigorating, in some way. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because I think the things that maybe we need as life goes on, our changing mood or whatever.
All the time. That's very interesting what you say about your house, because I think if you haven't found the colours in your wardrobe, they'll pop up somewhere in your house. You'll probably paint your kitchen a certain colour. It will come out. A colour that you love will come out somewhere.
Interesting.
Maybe it's the car that you choose. It's there. We instinctively know our colours. We just get a little bit lost along the way. It starts with our mothers dressing us in certain clothes, and then you're going shopping with a friend, and she says, "Oh, that looks lovely on you." What she means is that's I like that colour because it suits me. And then you get a partner, and they say, "Oh, yes, choose this colour." So we kind of get lost, and then fashion, obviously.
Yes.
You go along that journey. So I think it's really important to sort of come back and actually understand, well, which are my colours? What does suit me? Because everybody would find it supportive. And most of our customers say, why didn't I have it? Why didn't I understand my colours sooner? I wished I'd known sooner.
So how does because you've got so many colours,
Yes.
basic T-shirts, so many colours, for instance. How does your website help us to choose the right colour for us?
Okay, so the starting point, we've got a colour quiz.
Right.
So if you go onto the website and you know nothing about colour, I think that's a really good starting point. You can go and do the colour quiz, and it's obviously a quiz can't be 100% accurate, but it starts you thinking about it, and probably will it's for a lot of people, it just gets them in the right palette, it gets them closer, because they'll go, oh, I hate that colour, so immediately they push away from that. So I think that's a good starting point. And then once you've done the colour quiz, then you go and have a look at our filters. We've got some amazing filters. We've got one called Shop by Colour. And you can set, so let's say you come out of the quiz as a spring, you can go into the filters and you can just put spring, and only the colours for spring will come up. Right. So you can see what that palette looks like. And then let's say you want yellow. I'm going to have that spring yellow. You press the yellow button and all the styles available in that yellow come up. And then you can go through and shop for that yellow.
Right.
That's really clever. And is there a facility to have a more in-depth
yes.
colour assessment?
So then we have, because we're still working with a lot of colour stylists, we've actually got a directory on our website, so you can find somebody in your area to go and visit, and then have a personal, in-depth colour analysis, which is really exciting. And then our news here is, I've always wanted to have a physical space where I can get customers to come to us. So what we're doing here, we've actually moved from the pig shed, by the way. It's still very rural, still in the middle of nowhere. We're near Chard in Cricket St Thomas, but it's a beautiful space, lovely countryside all around us. But we've got a new building where we're going to be offering workshops and personal styling sessions, because I find that once people have discovered their palette, they don't quite know what to do with it. And it's like, sometimes you'll see people going to shops with their swatches and going, is that the right match? So what we're trying to do is then to help people. So that's the next stage. So we're going to be inviting customers here, and we're going to be helping them understand about colour combinations, how to dress for your colour, for your lifestyle, what it looks like in real life.
Oh, that's really exciting.
Yeah.
I'm booking a place, Melissa.
Yes, please come down.
I would love to. I mean,
yes,
it sounds absolutely fascinating, because it's taking it, on different levels, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like peeling an onion.
Yes.
You're going deeper into it,
yes.
which is wonderful. One of the interesting things I think is that you say that colours sell differently in different parts of the world. Is that right?
Yes. Now, I actually discovered this when I was working in my previous role in London, because I used to do this marketing for this fashion design company, and I'd get all the rankings of the styles for all the different countries, and I would notice, for instance, yellow would sell in Sweden, but then not in Japan. And then I would notice that like a lot of the blues sold in the different countries. And then I thought, and there's this jade green, this sort of emerald turquoise. Now, why does that sell across? That seemed to sell everywhere, but another type of green would only sell in, like a sort of mossy green, would only sell in the UK. Do you know what I mean? So I was noticing things, and I'm thinking, this is interesting. And so when I had my colour analysis, not only did it spark the idea for a business, but I also then got all the designers to have their colours done, and we tried to understand what was happening here. So now that I know more, I realise it's because of the skin tones in those countries.
Right.
So if you think about sort of, we think of Swedes as being quite fair, and probably there are a lot of springs who were attracted to the yellows, whereas in Japan, they're going to have quite a cool skin tone, so the yellows are not going to feel so comfortable. And this jade green is one, now I understand that it's almost universal. It sits in most palettes, and most people can wear it. Whereas if you go into a moss green, we've added a lot of yellow, and therefore it's actually quite a country colour. I think of it as quite sort of British, you know. I think in Ambridge there'd be quite a lot of people wearing their their moss greens.
Yes, sure. yes.
You have a collaboration with Prue Leith, who is just like such an icon for older women for how she wears colour. How did that come about?
Well, it was actually, if I'm being really honest, we made a mistake. We didn't realise she was a customer, because obviously her stylist was buying for her.
Of course.
And then one of the girls in the office spotted her in one of our jackets and posted a picture of her. And you're not supposed to do that. We didn't realise. So we put our hands up and said, "Oh, we're really sorry," when her PR lady came to us. And then she said, "Well, however, Prue loves Kettlewell, and she wondered whether you'd like to do a collaboration." And we went, "Oh, yes, please."
Amazing.
So I have been very lucky. I've been working with her stylist when we produced, for autumn winter, we've got some new designs coming up that, for Prue that I've worked on. For spring, summer, we'd already started the season, so we just had one style that was designed for Prue. So we've got this wonderful collaboration of because she lives colour, she celebrates colour, she embraces it wholeheartedly. She's absolutely wonderful. So it makes sense, this collaboration, completely. And I was lucky enough to go to her house to do the photo shoot. And I don't know if you know how old she is, but I think I'm allowed to say. But anyway, she's 83.
Is she really?
Wow.
And I'm used to doing photo shoots with the models, and we may take sort of 25 shots a day on models, and that's their profession. Well, Prue did 26 shots in one day. Wow. And she was doing a one-woman show. She was on tour. So she was doing that. She did our shoot. And so, anyway, there was one moment where we were sitting next to each other for a picture together. And I said, "Prue, I don't know how you do this. I mean, what's your secret?" And she said, "Well, I love life. I love my husband. I love a glass of wine. I love my food. And I love colour." And I just thought, there you go.
Wow.
There's somebody who is totally embracing life and embracing colour. She's absolutely wonderful lady.
Yes, and very connected, isn't she? Because it's interesting that you mentioned about her one-woman show, because, that I'm amazed. And she's absolutely, because it takes a huge amount of energy. But obviously that is exactly what she has. I mean, that's what you pinpointed when she did the shoot. And she does look fantastic.
She does.
And on your site, I've seen some of the pictures on the shoot, amazing. But she's very much in the moment, isn't she? She's very present. She's very present.
No, that day, and I just couldn't believe it. I mean, she was serving us lunch, and she came round with ice creams, and her stylist kept saying, "Now, Prue, will you go and rest now?" But she just had, and the next minute she's saying, "Would anyone like a book signed?" And I said, "Oh, my son's about to turn 18, and he adores you." So we went off to the office, and she signed a book for him. I mean, the energy is unbelievable.
Wow.
Brilliant.
Well, speaking of women who are getting a bit older but who have fantastic style, what sort of colours do you imagine Lillian wearing?
Well, this is really interesting, actually, because now that I can see you, Sunny, and I've met you, you're so different to Lillian.
Sorry to disappoint you, Melissa.
No, you're not at all. But no, because for me, I mean, Lillian, she feels so sort of glamorous and romantic, and not to say that you're not, but
no, I know.
and I see, sort of lots of jewellery, and sort of dressed up. I can't see her in jeans at all. I see her very much sort of dressed up, and probably in the winter palette, so fuchsias and purple. Do you think?
Yeah.
That's the sort of image I had, was this sort of very glamorous, quite smart lady.
Yes. I think you're right. I mean, certainly in my head, playing her, absolutely. Wherever she goes, she is dressed, even probably when she's riding. And she will have the best bust of absolutely everything, and she'll always be made up. Her hair will be, always, she would never walk out the door without looking glamorous in whatever way.
That's exactly what I see. Yes, always the makeup, the lipstick.
That's right.
She's going to have the lipstick on.
Absolutely, and always smelling of perfume. And,
yes.
There's all of that. I mean, I've often thought about the colour myself. I mean, I think for me, and the winters again, I suppose, are very positive colours, are they?
Yes.
Melissa, is that what you're saying? Yes, I think she is. They were pretty powerful colours.
She is, and she's quite forthright, isn't she?
Yes,
quite sort of
absolutely.
Definite, and I think those colours, that palette represents that. I mean, they're sort of, I think of the winters as taking charge. You often see them as leaders. I mean, this is quite funny actually. So I've got 3 children, and because my husband's very cool skin toned, I'm very warm skin toned. We've got a bit of a mix with our children. So my eldest daughter's a winter, and even when she was little, honestly, she was always in charge. She was always the one who would say, right, this is what we're going to do. Yes. For the age of 6. And that's how I see sometimes the winters, and I think Lillian is quite like that. She's quite bold. She's quite a bold character, isn't she?
Definitely, absolutely. Oh, that's so interesting. It'd be lovely, wouldn't it be fun to go through all the characters in the artist, the colour palette. But no, really interesting. It's really
thank you so much, Melissa. I'm really sorry that times we've kept you longer than we said, and it's just been so fascinating. We could go on for another hour, couldn't we, Sunny?
We certainly could. Yeah. No,
thank you so much.
And your site is fantastic. I mean, for anybody out there, please go. Can I just ask, where did Kettlewell come from? The name.
The name.
Oh, it's my maiden name. It's a village up in Yorkshire, actually. So when my husband and I were deciding a name for the business, and I was thinking of all these lovely colours, and he was saying, oh no, if I'm going to work in this, I need a sensible name. It's got to be one of our surnames. And we just thought Kettlewell was a little bit more quirky than Nicholson.
Yeah. Clever. Yeah. That's brilliant.
Yeah. And let us know, when you decide to expand, and we can all come and visit you, and you can give us, that would be fantastic. Please
from September we're open.
From September.
Brilliant. First September. And actually, if you do want to follow us, I mean, we have a Facebook group called the Kettlewell Colour Club, and any news of events will be posted in there. And actually, that's a fantastic space if you're frightened of colour and don't know where to start, because our customers are posting their Kettlewell products, and some of them are, I mean, honestly, they're experts. They just wear colour beautifully. And so it's quite a good place to see how to do colour.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
No, thank you for having me. I've loved it. I can talk about colour all day long. Thank you.
And it's so fascinating. Thank you so much, Melissa.
Yeah, thank you.
Gosh, well, that was a really fascinating chat, wasn't it? And in a very strange coincidence, with us just having chatted with Melissa, Dorothy, our lovely Dorothy, has a story about a woman called Melissa. And I wonder what colour palette Dorothy would be, Janie.
Oh, my Lord, I don't know, maroon and custard, perhaps. Dorothy's Melissa is the vicar's wife, and as you'll hear, she is very definitely a woman of style and substance.
Now, listeners, I don't always see eye to eye with the vicar. He's too well-meaning, if you ask me. He's got a very wet handshake, and I suspect him of voting Liberal. Fortunately, his wife Melissa's as tough as shoe leather. Some youngster tried to pinch a handbag outside Morrison's, and she fractured his housey father without stopping to draw breath. I had no idea they were breakable, but apparently they are. He went down like a doctored racehorse, and she dialed 999 while Phyllis from the checkout emptied 2 bags of ice cubes in his groin. Melissa flipped him over with the tip of her Kurt Geigers and just stood there with her left foot planted firmly in his buttocks until the police arrived. There was a lot of argy-bargy with her wanting him arrested for theft, and him saying he'd been trying to tell her she'd dropped a purse and that she should be arrested for groinal damage. But as Phyllis said, his trousers were tight to start with, and things were swelling at an alarming rate, so the police decided to drop all charges and get him to A&E before his jeans exploded. Course, the vicar goes to visit him in hospital, and as if there aren't enough undesirables in the congregation, he only persuades this hooligan to come to church once he's diddly-do's on the mend. Only he doesn't think to mention that he's related to the victim. Oh, well, it was bad luck that the Sunday he turned up, the Mothers' Union were giving a presentation called 50 Aids to Pray, and Melissa was striding about before the service with a few props, including a horsewhip and a pair of handcuffs. But we never did find out how to use them in prayer because the lad took one look at her, fainted and knocked himself out on the font on the way down. While the congregation were wondering what to do, the vestry doors opened and the choir start processing in. Oh, they're an ill-disciplined rabble at the best of times, and as they turned up the aisle to find an unconscious man bleeding profusely from a head wound, some of them went to pieces. Well, luckily, Lanky Lawrence, the choirmaster, noticed what was going on and took control. He's a strange man. 6'6" and bowls from the Vauxhall end, if you know what I mean. But anyway, he dropped to his knees and started doing CPR. Unfortunately, he starts singing Staying Alive to keep himself in rhythm, and the choir assume it's a change to the advertised hymn and join in with, well, what was quite a spirited rendition in the circumstances. By the time the vicar and the church wardens reached the aisle, they had to fight their way past a blood-stained floor and what looks like a badly dressed Bee Gees tribute band. The vicar had to shout his sermon over the two teams of paramedics and the whole service was a washout.
Oh, 3 cheers for Lanky Lawrence.
Yeah. Now, of course, in the unlikely event we ever need to give CPR, Helen Burrows and I think also Angela Barnes taught us that instead of staying alive, we can use the Archer's theme tune instead.
You're right, it was Angela Barnes, wasn't it?
Yeah,
God, I hope
yeah.
I'd never have to do that. Have you ever done a first aid course to learn it, Sunny?
No, I haven't actually. I did have to learn how to do CPR though. Years and years and years ago, I was in a play called Abigail's Party, and I played a character called Ange, and she was a nurse, or supposedly a nurse. And at the end of the play, one of the other characters in the show has a heart attack, and she has to do CPR. I do remember all that and being worried to death that I was going to hurt. It was a lovely actor called David that when I was sort of, pounding on his chest that I was going to hurt him. But yes, I do remember that's a long time ago. But have you had to learn it?
I did do both Nick
First
and I
aid.
did a first aid course. Actually, when we first started to look after the grandkids, we thought we'd take ourselves off and do a Red Cross course. And we also got elderly mothers as well. My mother was alive at the time, so we just thought it'd be handy. But that must have been really hard, Sunny, because CPR, you've got to learn how to do it so it looks convincing. But you can, if you're doing it properly, you probably will crack ribs.
Yeah, that was it. And I do remember, in fact, I had to make it look as though the pressure was actually going down on David, but in fact the pressure was coming up into my arms. So it was quite exhausting. I do remember that because I looked like I was putting the effort down there, but in fact it was coming up, and it was really quite hard work on my arms at the time.
How long did you have to do it for?
Well, for quite a while. I can't remember, such a long time ago now, but for however long, I mean, it would take for somebody to come back to life, really. So, yeah, there were quite a few compressions, quite a few. It was quite hard work. It was a highlight of the show, it always is with Abigail's Party. But, yeah, but not first aid. Was it quite intensive, the course?
It was a 1-day course.
Okay.
Which, just locally, it was very good. It covered all sorts of stuff, but you really need to do it every year because I can't.
You can't remember these things, can you? That's the problem.
No. No, I can remember the choking bit just about, but that's all I can remember. So
is that way? Is it called? Is it Braxton Hicks or something? If somebody, am I right? Have I got that name wrong?
No, it's Heimlich. Braxton
Heimlich.
Hicks is
What's that?
Braxton Hicks is when you're pregnant and you have those preparatory, contractions.
That's brilliant. Yeah. Oh, how funny!
Yeah. So if you're struggling on the pavement and some woman pushes everyone else aside and says, "I can do the Braxton Hicks manoeuvre," then you're in trouble.
I think I'd better stay away from a first aid. Don't come to Sunny. Terrible things can happen to you. Oh, that's so funny, Janie.
Oh, fuck.
Oh, my
Very
goodness
good.
gracious me. Yeah, well, there you go, you see. I'm not safe to be around.
But speaking of show, you've just been up north, haven't you? In fact, you've been up to Northwich to lovely Susie Osborne to do a show up there.
Our lovely Susie, who's been a guest on the podcast, hasn't she? Yes, she runs the Northwich Literature Festival, and she hasn't really been running it for a few years because of COVID, and she's back now.
How was your trip? Did you?
It was okay. You know, it's up that M6, which there's lots of roadworks and traffic queues and so on. It wasn't brilliant, but it was okay. We got there. We had a very lovely weekend, and the sun shone, and a very nice audience. So yeah, it was lovely. And of course, I'm a Cheshire gal. I come from Cheshire, as we've shared before, and so I've got lots of friends and relatives up there as well. So it was nice to kind of catch up with people after a long period of time. But yeah, it was. It was a very nice weekend. It was nice to be working, nice to be doing.
Yeah. I was sorry. I'm really sorry I couldn't come up and see it, but I was doing whatever it was I was doing that weekend. It was manic. I can't think. I think it was probably childcare, wasn't it? It usually is.
Usually, but you've done work there as well. I mean, you've done. I did your lovely Dorothy show, of course. That you wrote for me up there. And you've done your own show there.
I've done my own show up there as well. It's a lovely literary festival. Probably will have finished, won't it, by the time this goes out? But honestly, it's so well organised, such lovely people, fantastic audiences. Definitely, I want to get up there next year as an audience member to see something. Northwich Literary Festival, go and see it. And we're going to take a bit of a break now, aren't we, for the summer?
Yeah, we are. Because we're both quite busy with other commitments and things, and whilst we really love doing this, it's the preparation. It takes a little bit of while, research and things, but that's not to say we ain't going to be back.
No, we are going to be back. We'll definitely be back. We'll probably do something a bit different next season, I think, which is not to put one out every week, but to put them out as and when. So probably maybe a few more, but spaced apart. But we have got some very exciting ideas for guests. I'm not going to say who they are, just in case we can't get them. But we've got some really, really, really exciting ideas for people that we think we can get on the show, which I think you'll all enjoy.
And so really they're going to be like specials, aren't they? I guess. And if there was anybody in particular that maybe you would like us to chat to do with Ambridge or the Archers, do email in or let us know, Twitter, whatever, and we will, do what we can to get them on the show.
That's really helpful. Yeah, please do that. It's always really great to hear from people. And if you subscribe, if you hit the subscribe button wherever you listen to podcasts, then when we do put the next one out, you'll get a message from your podcast supplier to say, One Stiletto in the Grave episode, blah, 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 is now available. So it really helps us as well if you can hit that subscribe button. So, yeah.
And thank you all for listening, and have a really great summer.
Yeah, indeed. So we can't finish the season without finding out what you're having for dinner, Sunny.
Right, I'll tell you what. I thought I might have, if I can make it, a wild garlic pizza. And I tell you for why. Because I happened to be in an episode, or Lillian happened to be in an episode earlier in the week, I don't know if you recall this, but she and Justin went round to Adam's Honeysuckle Cottage, and dear Ian had made for them a wild garlic pizza. And I thought, yes, I'm going to try this. So I'll let you know how I get on.
Wow, you're not doing any personal appearances tomorrow, are you, after all the garlic for dinner?
Definitely not, love. Definitely not. No, wait, listen. What are you going to have for your dinner then?
Well, I'm being very laid back about it. I've got a very dear friend who's coming, I'd known since we were teenagers, who lives in the States, who's coming over to stay. And I don't really know what he's eaten today and how hungry he's being. So I've got a choice of 2 or 3 different things.
Oh, that's very nice.
And I'll just be laid back and see what he fancies when he arrives.
Well, that's a marvellous hostess. Marvellous hostess to give choice. Yeah. I don't think I give choice. You're a marvellous friend.
Well, I think I'm more. It's just they're all very easy to do. So yeah, it's just such a nice time of year to be cooking because there's so much fresh stuff around.
I know, and it's a beautiful day. So yeah,
All right,
Probably something lighter. Anyway, all right, love. You take care,
You
and
too.
lots of love to everybody out there.
Yeah, and see you again soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening to our One Stiletto in the Grave podcast. If you'd like to see behind-the-scenes clips and bonus content, please visit our Facebook page, One Stiletto in the Grave podcast. And if you'd like to ask any questions, follow us on Twitter at OneStiletto65. This podcast is produced by Raggedy House Productions and the music composed by Tom Smith. See you next time!